I know what you're thinking. This is not a restoration, more of a recycling experiment. I need to make a new workbench for myself, so of course I'll need a new marking knife as well. Making a kiridashi has been on my list of things to do for quite a while now. Now, if you'll pardon my butchering of the Japanese language, a kiridashi is the equivalent of a traditional style utility or X-Acto knife. They are usually forged and made of very high quality steel, with an incredibly sharp point and a chisel style cutting bevel. I will be making a right-handed style blade as my primary focus is woodworking. This means the bevel will be on the right hand side when looking directly at the spine or mune of the knife. It will allow me to have greater accuracy marking out lines as the blade will sit right against my rule or tri-square. I am marking this on an old, cracked, Italian-made cold saw blade that I've had lying around for years. The steel used in these is incredibly hard, which is perfect for what I want. The downside will be, as this is already hardened, it'll be difficult to process with hand tools alone. And trust me, you'll see my attempts. Be aware of your spark direction when using an angle grinder. The sparks don't really hurt, but if you have any flammable liquids laying around, well, it could be an issue. Clean up and think ahead for your own safety. There are many different blade angles that I could have used here. I chose the 35-degree angle so as not to have too fine of a point, while still having a wide cutting edge. I cut small reliefs in the surface to be carved out. For deeper carves, you can cut at angles as well to remove more material. In this case, the notches serve as depth guides for when I start removing the waste. Try and do gentle, even passes for a consistent curve, and you'll be able to feel each of the notches as you pass over the top of them. I had to jump between the angle grinder and different Dremel grinding heads to get everything cleaned up. Like I said earlier, this steel is tough. On the bright side, I'm hoping I don't need to re-temper the blade when I'm done, and it should hold an edge really well. An attempt was made. The steel in the blade is actually harder than the cheap file that I had to try and clean it up, so you can see it didn't really do much except maybe put a little shine on the surface. Owing to the fact that the metal is hardened very precisely from the factory already, I had to be very careful cutting this bevel so as not to overheat the steel. Any colour change could be an issue and will usually mean the temper is ruined. If I was on a grinding wheel, I would have some water nearby to dunk the steel in. Since I was using an angle grinder, a wet rag was used instead. If I told you I only spent a couple of hours sanding and trying to get this steel shiny, I'd be lying. It in fact took me several hours each day over a few days to even come close to cleaning this thing up. But the end was near. Here is where things started to go off track. As you can see, the perma blue was not affecting the steel in some spots. I searched for an answer and could only conclude it was a combination of overheating from the grinder and how the alloying metals in the steel reacted to it. Notice how it's only on the edges? So I decided to crack out some hydrochloric acid and see what would happen. By this stage, I had ground back the surface in case that helped with the bluing. All that time sanding, wasted. But it did the trick. The surface was darkened and it etched it a little bit. If you try something like this, Be very careful. Hydrochloric acid is bad for your skin, lungs, hair, eyes, just about everything. My normal gloves weren't as thick as I would have liked, so I used pliers when I could. Make sure you have good airflow and neutralize the acid properly with a base like bicarb powder and water when you're done. It looked okay, but I figured, in for a penny, in for a pound. I gave it a very light rub and some more of the super blue. And you know what? It didn't actually look that bad. I gave it a few more coats and got some nice blue colours showing up. Not consistent, but it was an interesting pattern anyway. This footage has been sped up a lot, but it was kind of cool to watch the patterns coming out of it. A quick oil and sharpen and there you go, it was done. Came out not looking too bad, if I have to be honest. Sadly, those blues seemed to fade and get darker over time, even though I had neutralized the bluing chemicals. So, I etched the surface again in hydrochloric acid and called it a day. It might be worth a revisit one day, but for now, it will do what I needed to do. If you have any suggestions on how to get a better finish on this steel or anything you'd like to see in some of these videos, let me know in the comments. Catch yous next time.